He said I wasn't family anymore. Those words didn't come out of his mouth that day, but they lived in his tone, in every glance that slid past me as if I were part of the furniture. I stood there, watching him brag about the house he bought for my daughter, about the business he was building from the ground up. Everyone at that table clapped, laughed, toasted. I just nodded and smiled the way a man does when he knows something the others don't. My name's Richard Ellison, and I spent 40 years of my life helping other people build their dreams. I ran a bank, quietly, cleanly, and with pride. When I retired, I thought the years ahead would be about family dinners and grandkids running around the porch. Turns out, I was wrong. That wedding was supposed to be the start of something new for Emily. She was glowing, holding onto Michael's arm like he'd hung the moon himself. I didn't mind his charm back then. I saw worse men in my time behind that banker's desk. But the way he looked at me when I handed him the gift, an old pocket watch that once belonged to my father, something cold passed behind his smile. He took it with 2 fingers, like he didn't want to touch the past that came with it. During the reception, he talked louder than anyone else, told stories about his business connections, how he just closed the deal bigger than anything the old banks could handle. I recognized the type immediately. Young, loud, desperate to sound like a self-made man. The kind who believes silence means weakness. Emily caught my eye a few times that night. She smiled, but there was worry in it, the kind a daughter hides when she doesn't want her father to notice. I pretended not to. Sometimes, love means letting someone walk straight into the lessons you can't teach. When it came time for speeches, Michael raised his glass and said, "To new beginnings and leaving the old ways behind." Everyone laughed. I didn't. My fingers tightened around the stem of my glass, and I thought, "Son, you have no idea what those old ways can still do." Later that evening, I stepped outside to get some air. The Texas sky stretched wide above the vineyard, the stars fighting to be seen through the city's glow. I heard laughter through the open windows, his laughter, and then my daughter's. I wanted to believe it was real. When they finally came out to say goodbye, Michael's arm was around her waist, pulling her close like a prize he'd earned. "We'll visit soon," Emily said. "You'll love the new place." "I'll hold you to that," I told her, trying to ignore the way he looked at his phone instead of at me. They drove away that night in a silver SUV that probably cost more than the first house I ever bought. I stood there until the taillights disappeared down the road, listening to the crickets start their song. The house felt emptier than usual when I went back inside. The photos on the mantel looked different somehow, like every face in them was turning away. I sat down in my chair, the same one I used to read Emily bedtime stories from, and realized something that settled deep in my chest. I'd been quietly replaced. I didn't get angry. I didn't call. I just made coffee the next morning and went to work in my garden. Because men like me, we don't chase after those who walk away. We wait. And when life circles back, we're right where we've always been. Watching. Listening. Ready.
Weeks turned into months, and the silence grew louder than any argument could have been. At first, I told myself they were just busy. Newlyweds, settling into a rhythm, learning the hard parts of marriage. I sent messages now and then, small things. "How's the house? How's business, son?" That last word, son, didn't feel right in my mouth anymore. The reply stopped coming somewhere around Thanksgiving. I remember because I was sitting at the kitchen table, carving a turkey breast just for one, when I saw my own name at the top of the phone screen. No response, just the little gray text bubble sitting there like a ghost. I laughed to myself, softly. A man learns to live with silence after enough years behind a banker's desk. But this kind of silence, it wasn't peace. It was erasure. I saw photos of them on social media, Emily smiling at dinner parties, Michael with that ever-present glass of wine in his hand. "Building something big," the caption said once. I'd been in banking long enough to know what that look meant, trying to look bigger than he was. One Sunday, I decided to drive by the new house just to see it for myself. It sat on a manicured street north of Dallas, all sharp edges and polished glass, the kind of house built for showing off. I parked across the road, far enough to stay unseen, and watched for a minute. Emily came out first. She looked thinner, paler. The wind caught her hair as she locked the front door and walked to the car. Michael followed a few steps behind, holding his phone, never once looking up. When they drove off, she glanced out the window, and for a split second, her eyes met mine. I don't know if she really saw me, but my heart tightened anyway. I didn't follow them. I just sat there a while, watching the house stand there like a museum piece. Cold, beautiful, and empty. A week later, I tried calling again. The line rang once, then cut off. I tried from the landline. Same thing. That's when I realized what had happened. My own daughter hadn't changed her number. He had. My number was blocked. There's a certain kind of ache that doesn't make noise. It just settles into your bones. That night I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat out on the porch. The air was heavy, thick with that Dallas humidity that never seems to leave. I looked out over the streetlights, wondering where I'd gone wrong. I didn't call again after that. Some men scream, some plead. I prune the rose bushes. I take walks before sunrise. I let the hurt turn into stillness. But stillness doesn't mean blindness. One morning at the cafe downtown, I overheard two men talking about Michael Turner. They were laughing, something about cash flow problems and his fancy office being all show. I didn't say a word, just folded my paper, left the tip, and walked out into the Texas heat. Later that day, I opened my laptop, typed his company name into the state business registry, and watched the filings load on the screen. Late reports, outstanding debts, a pending lawsuit from a supplier. The kind of trouble that doesn't come from bad luck. It comes from pride. I closed the computer, leaned back, and let out a slow breath. Maybe silence had its own kind of mercy. Maybe this was how lessons found their way home. But somewhere deep down, I knew something else was coming. And when the phone finally rang again, it wasn't from my daughter.
When the call came, it wasn't Emily's voice I heard. It was Sarah's. Steady, calm, the way I remembered her from the old banking days. "Richard," she said, "do you still keep an eye on the local business reports?" I smiled faintly, though she couldn't see it. Old habits die hard. She hesitated before lowering her voice. "Then you might want to take a look at Turner Investments. There's been movement." I thanked her, told her to stay out of whatever storm was brewing, and hung up. Then I went straight to my desk, the same oak desk that had held 3 decades of contracts and signatures. My laptop hummed to life, and within minutes, I was staring at the same company filings I'd checked weeks ago. Only now, the red flags had multiplied. Late payroll, missing tax filings, a lien placed on one of his vehicles. The kind of unraveling you could spot a mile away if you knew where to look. I sat back, folded my hands, and whispered to no one in particular, "Pride always spends more than it earns." For the next few days, I kept to my usual routines. Morning walk, coffee at 7, church on Sunday. To anyone watching, I was just another old man in Dallas tending his garden. But behind those quiet hours, I was watching everything. Every transaction, every press release, every whisper that reached the local business circuit. Michael Turner had built a glass tower on a sand foundation, and now it was starting to sink. I didn't tell Emily what I knew. How could I? Every photo she posted showed her smiling, her husband's arm around her, the picture of perfection. But I'd raised a daughter who looked happy when she was hurting. That was my mistake, I suppose, teaching her strength before teaching her how to ask for help. One afternoon, I stopped by the old bank just to say hello. That's what I told myself, anyway. Sarah met me in the lobby, the corners of her mouth tightening as she led me to her office. She closed the door before speaking. He came in last week, wanted to discuss a loan extension. It didn't go well. Arrogant? I asked. More like desperate. She leaned back, studying me. You knew this was coming, didn't you? I didn't answer right away. I just looked out her window, across the parking lot where I used to watch young men walk in with dreams too big for their wallets. People like Michael think banks exist to fix bad decisions. They forget that some of us built those banks to teach discipline, not rescue pride. Sarah smiled, but there was something like pity behind it. What are you planning to do, Richard? Nothing, I said softly. Not yet. She studied me for a long moment before nodding. You are always patient. As I walked out of that building, memories followed me. The sound of my pen signing the papers that built that institution, the trust people placed in my judgment. It was more than just a bank. It was my life's work. And now the man who said I wasn't family anymore was walking straight toward it, begging for help he didn't deserve. That night, as I sat on the porch, I saw a message light blinking on my phone. Unknown number. No voicemail. I didn't need to guess who it was. Some things Father just knows. The phone didn't ring again after that. Not for a while. But the silence had changed. It wasn't cold anymore. It was waiting. Because soon enough, the storm would find its way to my door.
It was late afternoon when Sarah called again. I was out back, trimming the rose bushes, trying not to think about the past. The sun was sliding behind the neighbor's oak tree, throwing long shadows across the yard. The phone buzzed twice before I wiped the dirt from my hands and answered. "Richard," she said quietly, "you were right. Turner Investments is going under." I didn't move. "How bad?" "Bad enough that he's coming in tomorrow," she said. "He's already requested a meeting about a bridge loan, $3 million. I let out a slow breath, the kind that carries more memories than air. I'd seen 100 men walk into that same office thinking a loan could fix character. Not one of them left better than they arrived. "Does he know who still oversees approvals for accounts over $2 million?" I asked. There was a pause, then her voice softened. "He will when he walks in." I could hear the quiet click of her keyboard through the line, the same rhythm that used to fill the bank when I was president. She was the only one from those days still there, the only one who remembered how I ran things, with order, fairness, and a touch of mercy when it was earned. "Sarah," I said finally, "keep the loan in review. Don't reject it, don't approve it, just hold it." She didn't ask why. She knew me too well for that. "Consider it in review indefinitely." After we hung up, I sat on the porch, watching the dusk settle. Dallas has a way of looking both new and ancient at once. Steel towers glowing while cicadas buzz from trees older than the city itself. I thought about Michael then, how certain he looked at that wedding, how proud he was of his shiny office, his imported suits, his talk of expansion. Now he was coming to me, even if he didn't know it yet. That night I couldn't sleep. I found myself pacing through the house, stopping in front of the photo from Emily's graduation. Her arm around me, that same spark in her eyes she had as a little girl when she used to help me in the garden. That photo had dust on it now. I wiped it clean with my sleeve and set it back down, right where it belonged. The next morning, Sarah texted me. "He's here." I imagined him in that chair across from her desk, wearing confidence like armor, the kind that cracks when reality hits. I knew how those meetings went. First charm, then frustration, then pleading. By noon, another message arrived. He's requesting an urgent review, wants a decision within 24 hours.
I poured myself another cup of coffee, slow and steady. Let him wait, I thought. Let him taste time for once. The following day, I drove into the city. I didn't go inside the bank, just parked across the street, same as I had outside their house months ago. From there, I could see the glass doors, the polished marble lobby. Michael came out an hour later, phone pressed to his ear, face tight. He looked smaller than I remembered. Sarah called that evening. "He's nervous," she said. "He's trying to find names, trying to find out who's reviewing his file." "Good," I said quietly. "Let him keep guessing." "Richard, this isn't just business for you, is it?" I looked out the window, the city lights flickering against the night. "No," I said. "It's family." There was silence on the line. Then she whispered, "Understood." After we hung up, I walked back to the porch, the night breeze cool on my face. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't since before the wedding. Control. And somewhere deep down I knew he was about to learn what patience can build and what pride can destroy. The following Monday morning, the sky hung low over Dallas, gray, heavy, the kind that promised rain but refused to deliver it. I was sitting at my kitchen table, reading the paper, when Sarah's name lit up my phone. "He's here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He brought an assistant with him. He looks exhausted." I folded the paper slowly. "Let him make his pitch." She hesitated. "You sure you want me to handle it?" "For now," I said. "Just tell me everything." She called me back an hour later. I could almost hear the tension in her breath. "He walked in like he still owned the room, but under that suit, Richard, he's unraveling. The numbers don't add up. The payroll's 2 months behind, the office lease is overdue, and he tried to offer the company trucks as collateral, the ones already under lien." "Classic move," I murmured. "When you run out of cash, you start selling the illusion of it." She sighed. "He said the company's just in a temporary slump. He needs a $3 million loan to restructure operations." "And did he mention Emily?" There was a pause. "Only to say she's been traveling, exploring herself," he said. I closed my eyes. That line told me everything I needed to know. Emily wasn't traveling. She was fading, slowly, quietly, like someone living in the shadow of someone else's pride. "Sarah," I said, "push the application through. Let it reach the senior review board. I'll handle the rest." She didn't ask how. She didn't need to. That night, I opened the old safe in my study. Inside were memories disguised as paperwork, contracts, certificates, and one thin folder marked Private, Ellison Holdings. Most people forgot that when I retired, I didn't sell the bank. I just stepped back. I still owned a quiet share of its lending division, enough to sign when it mattered. I flipped through the pages, scanning the current signatures and approvals, the chain of command. Sarah's name was still listed under operations. Mine was on the secondary authorization line, right beneath the managing directors. Funny thing about legacy, it never really leaves the building. 2 days later, the application crossed my desk, electronically, of course. The irony wasn't lost on me. A man who once mocked me for using a flip phone was now unknowingly begging for my digital approval. His file was a mess. Overstated revenue, falsified projections, inflated valuations. I'd seen it all before, but this was worse. It wasn't incompetence, it was arrogance pretending to be ambition. I hovered my mouse over the reject button, then stopped. That would have been too simple. Too clean. No, this needed to teach, not punish. Teach. I typed a note into the internal system. Requires executive signature for conditional approval, pending manual review. Then I printed the file, signed it, slowly, with the same pen I used the day I founded that bank. The sound of the nib scratching against the paper was soft, deliberate, almost ceremonial. When I was done, I placed the document back in the envelope and called Sarah. "You'll have it by morning," I said. "Send it to him yourself." Her voice was steady but quiet. "Do you want me to tell him who signed it?" "Not yet," I said. "Let him feel safe first." I ended the call and sat there in the dim light of my study, the smell of old paper and coffee wrapping around me. Outside, the rain that had been threatening all week finally started to fall. Somewhere across the city, Michael Turner probably poured himself a drink, thinking the worst was behind him. He had no idea the lesson had just begun.
2 days later, Sarah called again. This time, her voice carried a quiet tension, one I'd heard before, years ago, when large sums and bigger egos were involved. "It's done," she said. "He signed the contract this morning." I leaned back in my chair, the old wood creaking under me. "And?" She hesitated. "He didn't read the full signature page, just flipped through, signed, and handed it back. I sent him the finalized copy electronically. He'll see it soon enough." "Good," I said softly. "Let him take his victory lap first." That afternoon, I took my time doing small things. Washing the car, pruning the vines near the porch, brewing a second pot of coffee I didn't really need. Some men fight with fists or words. I've always believed patience is the sharpest weapon. The phone rang again at 5:12 p.m. Sarah didn't need to say a word. I could hear it in her breathing. "He called me," she said finally. "Sounded like he'd seen a ghost." I smiled faintly. "He found the signature, didn't he?" "He did." She took a breath. "He asked, 'Who the hell signed this? I thought the board handled it.'" "And what did you tell him?" "I told him the truth, that the board deferred it to senior authorization." "And when he asked whose signature it was?" "I said, 'You'll know the name.'" For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could almost see his face in my mind, the color draining, that perfect posture collapsing into disbelief. Sarah broke the silence. "Richard, I think he realizes what's happened." "Let him sit with it," I said. "Don't answer if he calls again." I hung up and stepped outside. The air smelled of rain-soaked earth and honeysuckle. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the Dallas skyline. I looked up at the clouds and whispered, almost to myself, "Some debts can't be paid with money." Across town, Michael Turner sat behind his desk, staring at that single line of ink. Richard L. Ellison. That was the name of the man he'd dismissed as irrelevant, the man he'd blocked, the man whose calls he said he was too busy to return. And now that same name was the reason his business still existed. Sarah told me later he'd gone quiet for almost an hour after seeing it, just sat there, motionless, phone in hand, as though trying to decide whether pride or fear should speak first. When he finally did call, twice, 3 times, I didn't answer. The phone buzzed on the table beside me as I watered the plants out back, the rhythmic sound of droplets hitting the soil, blending with the soft vibration. He left one voicemail. I didn't play it. I didn't need to. By nightfall, the city lights flickered on and the rain returned in sheets. I stood by the window, watching it streak down the glass, blurring the world outside. Somewhere beneath that same sky, my daughter was probably sitting at home, unaware that the ground beneath her husband's empire had just shifted. I wasn't proud, not exactly. What I felt was quieter, something between closure and sadness. A man doesn't win when his family falls apart. He just learns how to survive it. Still, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a certain satisfaction in knowing the lesson had landed. Sarah texted once more before bed. "He's been calling nonstop. Do you want me to tell him you know?" I typed back one word: no. Because sometimes the loudest answer a man can give is silence. And mine had just begun to speak.
The next morning, the phone started ringing before sunrise. I didn't need to look at the screen to know who it was. There's a particular rhythm to desperation. Quick, uneven, like a man running downhill with no brakes. I let it ring. When the voicemail tone kicked in, the house fell quiet again, except for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. I poured my coffee, black, no sugar, and carried it out to the porch. The air was cool, damp from the night rain, and for a moment I could almost convince myself it was any other morning. But the calls kept coming. By mid-morning, there were 9 missed calls, then 12. By noon, 20. Each one from the same number, the same man who once looked me in the eye and said I wasn't family anymore. It's strange how quickly arrogance turns into pleading once the ground shifts under it. Sarah texted around lunch. "He came to the bank, demanded to see you." I typed back, "Tell him I'm retired." Her reply came almost instantly. "He said he already knows that. He just wants to talk." I stared at the message for a long time, the word talk echoing in my head. Funny thing about talk, it's what people do when they can't undo what's been written. That evening, the phone rang again. I let it buzz twice before picking up. I didn't speak first. "Richard," his voice cracked through the line, stripped of all the charm he once wore like cologne. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I said nothing. He went on, faster now. "It's not what you think. The business, it's fine. We just hit a few bad deals, that's all. I just needed a little help to keep things running." Still, I didn't answer. Finally, he said, "Emily doesn't know about this. Please, don't tell her." That's when I spoke. "Why not?" He froze. I could hear it in the silence. "She doesn't need to worry," he said weakly. I replied, "She's already worried, just not about the right things." "Richard, please." I gave you silence. You turned it into arrogance. I gave you patience. You mistook it for weakness. And now you want help. Tell me, son, what exactly would that teach you? The line stayed quiet, then a soft exhale. "You hate me," he whispered. I looked out at the horizon. The sun was setting behind the oaks, painting the sky in that same copper color Emily loved when she was little. I said, "I don't hate you, Michael. I pity you." And then I hung up. The phone rang again seconds later. I turned it face down and walked away. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. No dreams, no tossing, just stillness. When I woke the next morning, Sarah had left a message. "He's pulled the loan, said he'll find another way. Emily called the branch asking about him." She sounded confused. I didn't reply right away. I just stared at that message, feeling the weight of it. Emily was finally asking questions, the right ones. That afternoon, I drove to the park near her neighborhood. I sat on a bench, watching the families walk by, kids chasing after kites, laughter floating on the air. Across the street stood their house, the one I had seen her leave months ago. Michael's car was gone. Emily stepped outside alone, phone in hand, eyes red from crying. She looked around for a moment, then sat on the porch steps, staring at the driveway as if waiting for something that wasn't coming back. I didn't approach her. Not yet. Some lessons need space to land. But I knew this. Silence had done its work, and it was almost time to speak again.
A week passed before the storm finally broke. Sarah called first, her voice low, careful. "He came in again," she said. "This time without the suit, without the assistant. Just him. He looked finished." I didn't ask for details. Some endings write themselves. That night, the phone rang once more, but it wasn't Michael this time.
It was Emily. Her name on the screen froze me for a moment. I almost didn't answer. When I finally did, her voice came through shaky, small, the way it used to sound when she was a child and woke from bad dreams. "Dad, were you involved in Michael's loan?" I took a breath, steady and quiet. "Why do you ask?" "He's gone," she said. "He packed up and left the house, said he'd handle it his own way. Then I found his briefcase. He'd left everything behind, contracts, emails, and your signature." I didn't say anything. She filled the silence. "I should have seen it, shouldn't I? The way he talked to you, the way he acted like you didn't matter. I just wanted peace, Dad. I thought if I kept quiet, things would get better." I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window where the moonlight painted soft streaks across the floor. "Silence doesn't make things better, sweetheart," I said. "It just makes the truth louder when it finally speaks." She sniffled. "You knew he'd need you." "I knew pride doesn't last forever," I said. "And I knew you'd see him clearly someday. I just didn't know when." For a long time, she didn't speak. Then, she whispered, "I'm sorry." Those 2 words hit harder than any insult ever could. "You don't owe me an apology," I said. "You loved someone and trusted him. That's never wrong. It just hurts when they don't deserve it." She took a shaky breath. "What do I do now?" "You start over," I told her. "You come home. You let time do what pride couldn't. Heal." There was a pause, and then, softly, like the first breath after a long storm, she said, "Okay." When the line went silent, I stayed there for a while, holding the phone against my chest. Outside, the night air felt cooler, lighter somehow. A few days later, I heard from Sarah again. She pulled out every cent from his account, closed the business too. Rumor is he left town. No one knows where he went. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. Some men chase redemption. Others run from it. Either way, it finds them eventually. That weekend, Emily came by the house. She didn't bring luggage, just a small box of things she wanted to keep safe. We sat on the porch, the same place where I'd watched her drive away months earlier. She looked out at the yard and smiled faintly. "You kept Mom's roses alive." "I do my best. They're stubborn, kind of like you." She laughed, the sound fragile but real. "Do you think people ever change, Dad?" I thought about Michael, about all the men I'd watched crumble under their own weight. Then I thought about her, how even after betrayal, she still had the courage to ask that question. "I think some people learn," I said, "and the rest, life teaches them anyway." We sat there as the sun began to set, painting the sky gold. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the ache of being left behind. I felt the quiet steadiness of something returning home. Emily reached over, took my hand, and squeezed it. "You were never the problem," she said. "You were the anchor." I smiled. "No, sweetheart. I was just the reminder." She tilted her head. "Of what?" I said softly, "That some things never stop being family." The light faded, the air cooled, and for once, the silence between us wasn't painful. It was peace. Earned, patient, complete.